Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, we're going to make a holster for a cell phone. So to start off, I went ahead and I created out of cardboard the size of the phone that we're going to be making a holster for. And man, I can remember, it wasn't that many years ago, it was all about getting a smaller phone. This is not a very small phone. So anyway, let's set up over here on the workbench and we'll go from there. I'm happy to have you in the shop with me today. Okay, I've set up here, and like I said, this represents the phone, and I've got some of my packing paper here, and I'm going to be tracing the outline of the holster we're going to make for this. This is a pretty simple project. It's something that you can probably do out of your small pieces bin and complete it in an afternoon. So let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'll put in here a couple of lines that will show me the size of the belt that we're going to be using. And the gentleman wears an 1.5 inch belt, so I'm going to give an 1 3/4 inch of a gap here to make sure that it goes on the belt easily. So this is the belt here. So now that I've established where the belt goes, next thing I need to do is determine where the phone will go. And since this is the belt, this would be straight down on the side there. And I've made some that are tipped a little bit one way or the other. But I think on this phone we're going to keep it somewhat at right angles to the belt. So let's see here. Let's start with saying it's here for the phone. The next thing I need to do is to see where we'll put the loops to attach it to the belt. And I want those to be parallel with the phone case. So I'm going to draw a line out here. We'll start out here 1 inch and we'll figure out from there on each side. So I think this will be the outside of the loop that is cut. All right, now that I've got just some kind of rough ideas sketched on here, we have the phone sketched here on the belt. We're slightly canted, but pretty much right angles to the belt. I've established where the slots will be in the holster for the connection point to the belt. The next thing I need to do is I'm going to draw out here enough leather to stitch around. As we come around here, I want to lay off enough to give me a area to stitch. And I'll straighten this up with a ruler here once I get done. Now I think I'm going to make it have, I'll just call them ears here, kind of looks like ears. And we'll come down here, and I don't want to go, I don't think, below the belt line, but I want to come down that direction here. We'll come across and back up. So there's probably a lot of manufacturers out there that make a cell phone holster that looks somewhat like this. But we're going to do this out of our own shop here. I think that's about it. Holy smokes, the thing looks big. But I mean, our phones are fairly large anymore. That gives us a little bit here to grasp a hold of. I may bring these ears up just a little bit more to exaggerate this, and I may come down closer to the belt line here. Let's loosely cut this out. And I'm going to just try to stay a 1/4 inch outside of that line. And I've got 2 different weights of leather here. And I think I like the little bit heavier on the back side. I've seen these where both of these pieces were made the same size and you just kind of like pushed in like that and it made them open up. But I like to wet form the front just a little bit around my cardboard phone. So I'm going to use a little bit heavier leather for the backing of it, and I think by doing that it'll help give a little more structure to the holster. So look for a spot on here that looks good. We're going to be doing an oiled finish on this. That looks pretty good there. Let me scribe out here on my outside line. I really like these scissors. They cut this vegetable tan leather very nicely. I'll measure this in a second and let you know what thickness this leather is. Yeah, about 7 ounces. And this front piece is going to be maybe 4 ounces. Now, this is the shape of the back of it. My front of it is going to need to be a little bit larger so that I get room for the wet form on the front. This is a 1/2 inch thick, so I need it to be an inch wider than this. So the way I'll do that is I will start my sketch here on one side. I started in the middle of the bottom. I'll come around the top here. Okay. Now I'm just going to shift this 1 inch to the right. Start tracing here in the middle again and go around the outside. Okay, this gives me a piece that's big enough for that room, and like I said earlier, I've made this a little bit bigger than what I would need, and I'll be able to get it cut to size. Now you might ask, I've thought about whether I want the finished side, how I want to do the finished side on this. The outside of it, I definitely want the finished side here. The back side of it, I decided I wanted to leave, I'll slick down this rough side, but this will be the outside on the back. And then this will be on the inside. And I chose that so that I felt like it was easier to keep this clean than it would be to have the rough side. So the way I see the phone going in is if this is the front of the phone, that they turn it like this and put it in there. That will help protect the screen, in my opinion, because if you bang on here, you're banging on the back of the case that's on the phone. And the glass is against that smooth side that you can take and you can clean in there if you feel like you need to. So that's the reason why I did it. If you want it smooth side out on both, then I would cut the pattern flipped over so that you would be, matching up the same shape to the same shape if you turned it around. I think that makes sense. So it's going to go like this and like this on here. Okay? And then at the bottom, I'm going to put a little slot here so you can get a hold of the bottom of the phone with your finger and pop it up if it's harder to withdraw from the case. So the next thing I need to do then is to create that little finger notch at the bottom. Then what I need to do is I need to center it here. To find the center, I'll do this. Put a little mark here. And I'll measure up 1.5 inches. Put a little mark there. Determine the width that I want for the finger notch. I think this 1/2 inch is probably about right. think I want that notch a little deeper, and I think I want it bigger. I think it's probably enough to get a finger in there and push up on it, but there's plenty of meat down here to hold the phone in place. I'm going to make that larger. Okay, I think that'll work. Now the next thing I want to do in looking at this is I want to establish where I think my stitch line is going to be on this case. And this is the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to put a couple little dimples here. And what I'm trying to do is establish my glue line on this leather. Now remember, from here to here, that leather's open. I don't want glue to show here on the veg-tan. So I'm just going to put a slight line here on both sides to remind myself when I get there. I'm just going to use my Weldwood contact adhesive. We've got about 1.5 inches here at the top and 3/4 of an inch there. And I put 2 coats of contact adhesive on the leather, letting them tack up between them, and make sure I get a really good adhesion between these 2 layers. All right, I've got the phone clipped in place. I put a mark to tell me where the center is. I've wet my leather a little bit here, maybe a little bit more than a little bit. And then I'm going to line up on this mark down here for my finger slot to the center. And I can trim off to get these lined up, but I think I'm about right. Now I just put it along the bottom here. Now I'm going to pull on these sides. Try to get these to stick when I want them to, and not sooner. If I was making a lot of these, I'd maybe make myself a wet form mold, the size of the phone, and wet form this, but this works pretty well, I think. I've had good success in the past doing it this way. There we go. I'm going to shape this down a little bit more here, and I'll be able to get my holes aligned here to go on the belt, but I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to let this dry for probably half an hour or so. It'll already kind of start to take some shape. Then I can pull the phone out of the case, and then we'll put in our stitch line here around the ears and establish the rest of the parts of this. But I think we're in pretty good shape here to get started. Oh yeah, I got to put my mark somewhere. All right, so that has set up for, turns out about 40 minutes there. Still a little damp, so I need to be careful of it. The next thing I need to do is to lay in my stitch line here, and I'm going to work from here out. So now I'm going to lay in my stitch line here, and I need to be careful. This leather's still wet enough here that it's easy to mark. So I'm not going to use the texture side down on the holster. And I'm going to stay back from this corner a little bit here. You'll see why. Stay away from these corners. And now I'm just going to freehand in this corner. All right, so I've established my stitch line around the phone, and I stopped about a 1/4 inch down, and what I'm going to do is there'll be a stitch line that comes out on this ear, circles around the hole made for the belt, and then it'll come back in down here. And I'll do that on both sides. Instead of trying to freehand that and then create the hole, I'm going to go ahead and put my hole in here for the belt, and this is a 2-inch bag punch. And I'm going to stay about a 1/4 inch off of the stitch line here, trying to keep nice and parallel with it. 1/4 inch off the top here, and that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do the same thing here on this other side. Okay. Just a damp sponge, not getting any wetter than I want, just to be able to put a line around this. So this stitch line will come off of here and loop around to there, and then a parallel line with the phone. This is stitch line now. Okay. I'm using 5mm spacing on my stitches here. So I think we look pretty good. I'm going to let this finish drying before I do the stitching, because this is only 4-ounce leather on the front. I don't want to pull the stitches through the leather, and you could. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of my trimming out here and get that all set in place. Once I have my stitching done, I'll do the final sanding, but we're getting close here. So I'm using some Tiger Ritza thread in white here. This case will oil and be a nice light brown, but over the next year or so it will be more of a dark walnut, is what the leather will age to over time. All right, we're just about finished up here. And when I finish, I will back stitch 1.5 times and tie this off on the back side. I think it looks pretty good. I went ahead and I put a double stitch here and here, just for a little more strength. Let's. I'll tie this off and I'll meet you at the sander. And I might be a little heavy-handed here. I don't mind getting rid of some of the space on the outside here, but you have to be careful at this point because you get end up with a wiggle in the line. I don't want that. I'm going to use my number 2 Ron's edger here. It's a little furry on the back, but I'm going to slick that down with TanKote once I have it all oiled and finished. I'll finish this up and I'll come back when I'm ready to get a little bit of oil on this. Well, there you go, another completed, nice little Saturday afternoon project. You probably had the materials on hand to make this. I think it came out nice. You could do a lot of other details if you wanted. You could do tooling on the face of this. You could put initials on it or a brand for a ranch. And you probably have the materials on hand to make this project. And it comes together really pretty nicely. So I don't have a pattern. You saw me develop the pattern. I've got confidence you can as well. So appreciate you being here in the shop with me today. Please like, share, and subscribe, and more importantly, have a great day.